Hello and welcome back to another episode of TACHES Teaches. I'm Tash and this is part 9 in a series on mindset hacks. Today I'd like to talk about interests. As we go about our lives, certain things will interest us. A conversation overheard in a bar may catch our ear, or the title of a novel in a bookshop may catch our eye. We learn of a historical figure that we can't help but proceed to spend hours then reading about online. For some reason, certain things will interest us. Curiously, we don't choose what we're interested in. There's something deeper that titillates each of our individual senses with that desire to learn more. There's a mysterious force at play that will lead each of us throughout our lifetimes down our own individual, occasionally intersecting paths. Because of this, some of us will become writers, while others will become mathematicians. We may feel like we have a choice in what we end up doing and how we do it, but ultimately there is something larger at play, deciding what we're predisposed to be interested in. When we stumble across something that interests us and instigates a feeling of curiosity, I believe that we should see that as a sort of holy moment. As a child, almost everything is new, and therefore exciting and interesting. We observe newness with a sense of wonder. We may then lose interest in something, but the initial approach was that of an open-minded focus. As we grow older and have established things we are interested in, we begin to close off our mind to newness. We've excelled in certain areas and given a great deal of time and effort to learning how to do those things. So the idea of starting afresh and learning something totally new can seem daunting and in many ways a little bit pointless. It's easy to think that applying oneself to something new will take away from previous applications, but I believe it is quite the opposite. For there is a feeling that can only be felt in the beginning stages of a new undertaking, as you begin to map out a totally uncharted territory, making connections between things you may have thought before unconnected, or indeed had no idea even existed. Nothingness suddenly becomes a blurry image, and then that blurry image starts to come into focus. A total beginner will excel much quicker at something and learn quantifiably more in a day than an expert will, and there is something really quite special about that. It's sort of dangerous to become an expert in something, for the clearer and clearer we seek to understand just one thing, the more distant and unimportant everything else seems to become. This is why I try, despite still seeking expertise in certain areas of my life, to remain a novice at a lot of things too. What I mean by this is to make sure that there is always something new on my plate that can fuel me with, childlike wonder. New interests bring with them vast amounts of fresh material to get excited about, and techniques to use to better understand myself and the world around me. There is no ego as a beginner, as we know that we do not know. So the way we go about learning is far purer than we may be used to in our main fields of interest. I tend to view almost all new information regarding music through the filter of what I know and believe, and so it is often tainted by my own expertise. That's not necessarily always a bad thing, as with that expertise has come my defined personal taste and style. It's simply a different process. Recently, I've been getting really into filmmaking, and because it's a totally new world to me, I can't help but wonder and dream. I'm filled with questions that require me to push myself to answer them, and ideas that I'm filled with fire to make come to fruition. I've always loved cinema, and despite talking about wanting to write and direct and film movies for most of my life, I only really started getting into it through making this YouTube channel. Once I had my foot in the door of regularly using video editing software and contemplating the best angle for a shot, I began to think more and more in terms of cinema. Oftentimes, I now find myself thinking of the sounds I would create in terms of what I would pair with them visually. Or when I'm filming something, I envision how the scene should sound musically. Connections formed in one discipline very often travel over to the others, blurring the lines between them. Different mediums require us to take the same problems into account, merely from different angles, which in turn affords us totally new perspectives. I believe that quite often the best pieces of art are the ones that presented us with the need to solve a problem. Oftentimes, as we become more expert in our chosen areas, many of the problems we originally struggled with as beginners are pretty much sorted out. We have our methods and we tend to stick to them. We do not seek new answers as we already have ours that work. I think it is healthy to create for ourselves problems to solve, as through doing so we allow ourselves to become childlike again. When we are beginners, we will find that we hit many walls, but the walls are often just not knowing how to do something yet, and this is very easily overcome. As we become more proficient, the walls we hit tend to be more internal and existential. Often the answers lie deep within us, or far further afield than the art form itself. The answers we seek come to us while we wash the dishes, or indeed partake in different creative activities. It is humbling to be stuck, and enlightening to then become unstuck. Through being stuck, we can truly face ourselves and begin to see what we are capable of creatively. The energy which we receive from solving a problem in one discipline goes into our universal creative energy reserve that can then be applied to whatever else we choose to do with it. The beauty of having multiple interests is that if you find yourself feeling stale in one medium, you can simply put down your guitar and pick up a paintbrush. Perhaps you do not paint paintings yet that you view as favourably as your music, but the point is to keep working anyway. When we enter into a dance with a new art form, we're presented with a whole new set of masters to learn from too. As we begin to make sense of the form, we begin to understand the language of these new masters too, and ultimately they are talking about the same things we are used to thinking about in our forms, but just in a different language. We can learn as much about writing beautiful music from an architect as we can from a musician. To experiment with different art forms is to speak many languages, and sometimes the best way to say something that we feel so passionately inside may not be in our mother tongue, or even in a tongue that we speak yet. There are things that I can say with a camera that I cannot with my music. It does not mean that one is better than the other, it just means that I have more opportunities to express myself while I'm alive on this planet. So if you're a musician, why not take some photos? If you're a photographer, perhaps you should try your hand at cooking. Or if you're a chef, why not try writing a novel? Perhaps you have yet to find the medium that will best allow for you to express your true being. And if you have found it, you will thank yourself for giving yourself the gift of the beginner's mind again. See how that softness that comes with it influences your main form of art. There is nothing to lose, but so much to be gained. There is so much left to learn, so much left to try, so much left to combine. Well, that's it for today, folks, and I hope that this video has been interesting, and that you will today decide to try your hand at something new. Maybe there's something you've been sat on the fence about diving into for a while, like myself with filmmaking. But let this video be the kickstart you need to treat yourself to something new. If you enjoyed my ramblings, then please remember to like and subscribe, and turn on those bloody notifications to keep up to date with all of my future videos. If you'd like to take your support a step further, then you could become a patron too. As always, happy Monday and happy creating.